So Marg and I are part of a larger group that's been meeting since probably about July, and I'm keen to see the Community Land Trust start here. So just to tell you a bit about Marg here, who had the opportunity to be raised on a family farm in northeast Victoria and be part of the family team that operated the farm, and that's really influenced her life ever since. In her 20s, she got to be part of a private equity co-op arrangement with 3 couples and herself in separately owned dwellings in the rural Yarra Valley. The group pooled their finances, and because of this, it was possible for Marg to buy her first home. They helped each other with renovations, gardening, childminding, cooking, and even relocating a house. In her 30s, she moved to Canberra, and she was the first woman to get a building license in Canberra. She's passionate about good design and involving women in planning and building towns and cities. She's been in Bellingen for 5 years and is interested in well-designed suburban infill. Her participation in the Community Land Trust stems from a deep belief that we are all here briefly, and it would be good to leave our community with living and working arrangements that provide diversity, security, and are supportive now and in the future. Marg Girdwood.
So now I'm going to introduce Vicki. Vicki Parks had the good fortune to be raised in Hawaii in the 50s and 60s. She lived in Honolulu at a time when there were no buildings taller than a coconut tree. In the 80s, Vicki and her mum subdivided the family property in a way that allowed for common spaces and shared benefits. Vicki finished university, brought her admin skills to property management, and left the USA to marry an Australian. Over time, she accumulated decades of residential property management experience, designed and project managed 2 homes, and shared her own home with exchange students, B&B guests, and housemates. In 2009, she attended a Transition Bellingen workshop and met a host of locals concerned about the well-being and resilience of this community in light of climate change. 10 years ago, Vicki. Yes. She knew then that she was in the right place. Watching her own home in Bellingen evolve in its usefulness and the joy of home maintenance waning, she began longing for, quote, a house with 1 cup and 1 spoon. It's out the back there, Vic. Following a trip to the USA, where she saw some smart ideas around downsizing, she located the Bellingen Nambucca Affordable Housing Working Group, then on its 3rd meeting. She has been an active member ever since. Many of her classmates could not afford to stay in Hawaii once they became adults. Her particular interest in setting up a community land trust is to be able to offer the young residents a way of staying in the Shire, especially those who grew up here. So I think we're going to the first slide. All right, there you go. So I'm just going to continue for a little bit. So I'm going to introduce you to the working group, and this is our vision. So I've met regularly since the last Housing Forum, a small group of committed volunteers from Urunga, Bellingen and Dorrigo. And so you see up there, that is our vision, that the Bellingen Shire is diverse, inclusive and thrives into the future. I'm going to read you the next bits out because they are important to get right. Our group's purpose is that the Community Land Trust, or what we call CLT, will be a not-for-profit enterprise which owns properties throughout the Bellingen Shire. The CLT will provide the opportunity for people to have a secure place to call home. These homes will remain affordable for future generations through shared ownership or long-term leases. The homes will be environmentally responsible, sustainable, and universally designed wherever possible. The CLT will help to ensure that the Bellingen Shire remains an inclusive and diverse community by providing affordable and secure homes into perpetuity. And the group is underpinned by 5 values: respect, courage, innovation, fairness, and good governance. So all the things that I just mentioned there were developed by the group over the last many months. So Community Land Trust is an alternative built on stewardship, positive change, of giving back to community and local solutions. This will be a community approach responding to the current broken housing system, a housing system with the prevailing duopoly of private home ownership or private rental. We are working to establish a CLT in a way that traditional financial institutions can respond and where legal arrangements are clear and fair. By the end of 2020, that's by the end of next year, hopefully sooner, we'll be established legally with all of the arrangements in place to develop a portfolio. Over to you, Vic. Okay. I'll put the slide up. Hang on. I'll in charge of slides. All right, here we go.
Lovely. Okay. So what I noticed this morning is everybody's mentioning Community Land Trust, and I thought, oh, if I wasn't in this group, I'd want to know what it is. So a Community Land Trust is a non-profit, for-purpose organization that provides for affordable housing in perpetuity. Parcels of land owned by the Community Land Trust are held in perpetuity. That is, the holding continues as long as the need continues, from generation to generation. Churches hold property in perpetuity. When churches were the keystone of the community, it was not uncommon for a member of the church to leave their land and buildings to the church. New ways of connecting within the community evolved over time, and the church is now one of many points of contact. In spite of this, it doesn't seem that there are many new ways to leave property to the community and know that it will be used for the good of the community forever. A little history of Community Land Trusts. They began in the United States and were built on action and philosophy, particularly after the 1920s. The first record is there was one in 1969 and one in 1972. And presently there are more than 240 different community land trusts in the USA, the largest being the Champlain Housing Trust in Vermont, which owns 2,000 homes. In the UK, community land trusts showed up in the year 2000, and now there are more than 290, half of which have formed in just the last few years. While there are a number of communities in Australia working hard on setting up community land trusts, we know of none yet fully operational, unless Andrew gives us some news. What we do have is the Australian Community Land Trust Manual. This manual was published by the University of Western Sydney in 2013 and made possible through the work of Louise Crabtree and her associates by way of funding from the Australian Research Council, as well as the Western Australian Department of Housing, the City of Port Phillip and the City of Sydney, the Inner Melbourne Action Plan, the St Kilda Community Housing Limited, and the Mount Alexander Community Land Limited. And I know that these two last mobs are among those trying to set up community land trusts now. We were fortunate to have Louise here last year as a speaker, and just a big thank you to Louise for this work. It's just amazing. It's huge, and we're working through it. And it also includes this accompanying appendices, which are loaded with examples of the kind of legal documents needed for operating a community land trust. We'll be using this detailed manual as we work through the issues associated with setting up the land trust here. Once we are a little further down the track, we will, of course, be engaging legal and financial expertise. We will need to find funds to support this development process or find suitable pro bono help. Our purpose being to provide the opportunity for people to have a secure place to call home, which will remain affordable for future generations and ensure that the Shire remains inclusive and diverse as a community. Why do we need a community land trust? Marg?
Oh, okay. Well, let's go through that. Excellent. So, you've heard a lot about this morning. You've heard a lot about the broken housing situation in Australia, the history of it, and the facts that some of the national sheltered statistics came through loud and clear. The wealth generation and accumulation of housing versus a human right is something that does need further discussion throughout the community. I've gone a bit off script because a lot of it was said this morning. So I'll just tell you a little anecdote. When I was in that equity co-op that Vicki talked about in Yarra Junction in Victoria, I was on a second-year teacher's salary. To buy the little shack with no electricity, everything run by gas, the water tank and so on and so forth, cost me $21,000. However, that was still 3 times my salary at the time. So housing is unaffordable because, as Kerry said before, the disparity between income and price is out of everyone's reach. The only way I got the loan from the bank was because we had a shared equity co-op bank account. They used the bank account as to find out whether we had enough money to service the loan. So the wealth generation thing now, or having a home to call home in the private to buy one, is really out of everyone's reach, particularly young people. So is the rent. The average rent in Bellingen at the moment here is $410 per week. Now that, you always hear that and you think, well, hang on a second, for a year, that's $21,320. Think about the average income on a low income. It's actually not always 80,000, which people quote. It's actually much less than that. And the minimum wage case is actually happening today in Australia, so I'm not sure what the result of that is. But the minimum wage is something like 700 a week, is it? So 700 a week and you're putting out 410, that's nowhere near 30%. So these things are important to keep in mind when we talk about affordability. So what we're trying to do here is set up a system to offer another alternative. An alternative that will be able to respond to the housing need that was talked about this morning from this panel. That is 1 and 2 bedroom constructions, whether they're flats, whether they're small houses, whatever they are, and the ability for the underoccupied 3 and 4 bedroom houses, which we have masses of, to be changed. So we will offer, hopefully, an alternative both in terms of affordability and housing types. I'm handing it back to you, Vic, because I'm going to change the slide again. Change the slide. Here we go. There we go.
The ownership, organizational, and operational components of a community land trust are distinctly different from the traditional property ownership and renting models which we're familiar with. And there are many, many variations within community land trust models. In fact, I would doubt that there are any two that are exactly alike. And sorting through these variations will be the work of our committee over the coming months. Our current work program includes investigating the relative merits of a not-for-profit company structure or establishing as a cooperative society. It involves exploring the financial and legal arrangements necessary, and we envisage that there will be a mix of arrangements including co-ownership, shared equity arrangements, and very long-term leases. Incidentally, many community land trusts use a 99-year lease that is renewable and inheritable. Imagine that when we're renting. If we, gosh, that alone would make such a difference. Additionally, we will be exploring a business model that is a mix of philanthropic grants and land grants, as well as capital gain through entering into shared equity arrangements with individual purchasers. Over a longer period of time, we envisage that it will be possible to leverage finance against the Community Land Trust's property holdings in order to continue to increase our portfolio of affordable housing options in perpetuity. This is early indicative thinking, and our group is currently working through the legal and financial implications of the model in our own local context. That's how it works.
Next slide, Vic.
Mark. Next slide.
Yep, we're nearly there, gang. So, what could we achieve? So, over the last 40 years, it's been responsible for the need for low-cost housing in this Shire. The Community Land Trust builds on the work of people who've developed MOs or multiple occupancies across the Shire. It will be housing that embraces good design, as I said before, and encourages community connection and support, both of which are very important if we're going to have healthy people living in good houses. A CLT will increase the range of affordable housing options and types. It will disrupt, as we said before, the current dual system of home ownership or private rental. We need something new. The Community Land Trust could be the recipient of property from a variety of sources, from philanthropists, bequests, and from local council. It will also be self-funding. I'm just going to go to the next slide, and this is going to be a good bit, this one. You want to see what happens? Okay, look, there we go. This is the modern min stuff. So, what could it look like in the future? So this is our last slide, and it gives you some idea of some of our early thinking. Here we go. A small garden flat. Look at that. Bumps into there. Just bumps straight into your backyard, really. A well-designed, yay, a well-designed flat complex is coming around the corner. Sorry. You're going to have to read it out. Rural land for housing and food. Here we go. Look at that. Something new, a shop front, a business incubator, which will be income generating for the trust. What's next, John? Here we go. Oh, some Crown land is going to come at us. Good. So that's good. We're going to get some Crown land, and I think there's one more maybe. Oh, here we go. So co-located mixed housing common areas. So that gives you a sense of what we're doing, how it's going to work, and what we've been doing over the last little while. We plan to have a public feedback session with more of the bouncing balls coming in, sometimes before the end of the year. And a leaflet, which I've got a copy of here, looks like this. It will be available at the back of the room after this presentation. I thank you all for your attention, and look forward to reporting back. We'll report back towards the end of the year. Yes, go with the Community Land Trust.